The Empire's final eclipse. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Dominion had known only one direction, forward. Its banners flew above thousands of worlds. Its fleets patrolled trade routes stretching across entire sectors. Species rose, resisted, and eventually bowed. Some fought for decades. Others surrendered within days. In the end, the outcome never changed. The Dominion endured. At the center of that vast empire stood Emperor Zaldar IX. The throne chamber of Zalcor was silent as advisors gathered beneath towering columns of black crystal. A holographic map of the galaxy shimmered above the floor, countless stars glowing under Dominion control. Only a small cluster near the Orion Arm remained highlighted in a different color. Human territory. An elderly minister stepped forward. Reports from the frontier confirm increased activity among the Terran coalition. Zaldar barely looked up from his throne. Military activity? No, Majesty. Political. That earned his attention. The minister continued carefully. Several subject species have begun referencing humanity during anti-Dominion demonstrations. Murmurs spread across the chamber. The Emperor's expression hardened. Explain. A new hologram appeared. Intercepted messages floated in the air. If humans can resist, so can we. The Dominion is not invincible. Look at Terra. The chamber grew noticeably colder. For centuries, rebellions had been manageable. Armies could destroy ships. Fleets could bombard cities. Fear solved most problems. Ideas were harder to kill. Humanity has become a symbol, another advisor admitted. Zaldar rose slowly from his throne. At over 4,000 years old, he had witnessed the collapse of civilizations and the conquest of empires older than humanity itself. The notion that a young species could challenge his authority was almost insulting. They possess fewer worlds than a minor sector governor, he said. Their fleet is inferior. Their economy is smaller. Why are we discussing them? No one answered immediately. Finally, a military strategist stepped forward. Because they continue resisting. The Emperor stared at him. The strategist swallowed. Every attempt to pressure them has failed. Sanctions failed. Border raids failed. Diplomatic threats failed. Each action seems to strengthen their resolve. Silence followed. Zaldar walked toward the holographic stars. Human space looked insignificant against the vast Dominion. A tiny stain on an otherwise orderly galaxy. Yet it persisted. That alone was becoming dangerous. Prepare Operation Final Eclipse. Several advisors froze. The order was unprecedented. Majesty, one ventured carefully, that level of mobilization would require. I know exactly what it requires. His voice cut through the room. Humanity will be removed permanently. The hologram changed. Thousands of fleet markers appeared. Then tens of thousands. 40,000 warships. Entire battle groups shifted toward the Orion Arm. The campaign's objective appeared in glowing letters. Capture Sol. Destroy Earth. Terminate human resistance. No one argued further. The decision had been made. Far across the stars, in the Terran Coalition Defense Command orbiting Mars, Admiral Marcus Hale studied a very different display. The tactical room buzzed with tension. Officers moved between stations while streams of intelligence reports poured across massive screens. The Dominion was mobilizing. Fast. Hale leaned back in his chair and rubbed tired eyes. 52 years of service had left lines across his face, but his gaze remained sharp. A commander approached. We've confirmed the numbers. Hale glanced at the report. For a moment, even he looked impressed. Well, he said, they certainly aren't being subtle. A few nervous laughs broke the tension. Not many. The numbers were terrifying. One officer spoke what everyone was thinking. What are our chances? Hale studied the fleet projections. The answer wasn't encouraging. Against raw firepower, humanity was hopelessly outmatched. Against conventional strategy, the war was already lost. He looked around the room. Against their ships, he said. Terrible. Nobody smiled. Then he pointed toward the tactical map. Against their plans? Excellent. Confused expressions appeared across several faces. Hale stood. They expect us to defend every colony. Every station. Every moon. That's how most species fight. He enlarged the map. Human settlements flashed across dozens of systems. We won't. The room fell silent. Evacuation routes appeared. Fallback positions. Supply caches. Prepared ambush zones. The strategy was risky. Some worlds would be abandoned. Political leaders would hate it. Citizens would panic. But survival came first. We're not fighting for territory, Hale said. We're fighting for time. Days later, the First Dominion fleet entered the Proxima system. Their commanders expected frightened defenders and quick victories. Instead, they found empty space. Then the asteroids moved. Massive mining rocks ignited hidden engines, accelerating directly toward the invasion force. Alarms erupted across Dominion vessels. Before formations could adjust, concealed explosives detonated throughout the jump gate network. The system became a storm of debris, fire, and shattered warships. Hundreds of Dominion vessels vanished in minutes. The human fleet appeared briefly, fired coordinated strikes, and withdrew before a counterattack could form. By the time the smoke cleared, the attackers controlled the system. But victory had cost far more than anyone predicted. Back on Zalcor, casualty reports arrived. The Emperor read them in silence. His advisors waited nervously. Finally, he set the report aside. Incompetence, he said coldly. Continue the offensive. Meanwhile, light years away, Hale watched footage from the battle. A faint smile crossed his face. Good. An officer looked over. Good, sir. Hale nodded. They still think this is going to be easy. Beyond the observation window, stars stretched into darkness as the Dominion Armada advanced deeper into human space. The war had finally begun. The species that refuses to lose. 3 months into Operation Final Eclipse, the Galactic Dominion controlled more territory than ever inside human space. Yet something was wrong. Every strategic report delivered to Emperor Zaldar carried the same contradiction. The Dominion was advancing. The Dominion was winning. And the Dominion was bleeding. Inside the command citadel aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Ascendancy, a holographic battlefield rotated above a circular table. Red markers represented Dominion fleets. Blue markers represented human forces. The blue markers kept disappearing. Unfortunately, so did the red ones. A senior commander pointed toward the display. We have secured 7 systems and destroyed multiple coalition shipyards. Then why do I keep receiving casualty updates? Zaldar asked. The commander hesitated. The humans refused decisive engagements. Another officer took over. They abandon installations before we arrive. They evacuate populations. Then they attack supply routes after we've moved on. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. The strategy made little sense. Most species defended territory at all costs. Humans seemed willing to give up ground if it bought them another opportunity later. Find their main fleet, Zaldar ordered. We've tried. And? We never find it where we expect. The room fell silent. The Emperor disliked mysteries. Humanity was becoming one. Meanwhile, nearly 200 light-years away, Admiral Marcus Hale stood inside a converted mining station hidden within an asteroid belt. The station was ugly, cramped, and entirely unsuitable for directing a war. That was exactly why he liked it. A polished headquarters would have been vaporized weeks ago. His deputy entered carrying fresh reports. The Dominion captured Vesta Colony. Hale nodded. We evacuated 96% of the population before they arrived. Some politicians are calling it another retreat. Of course they are. The deputy folded her arms. You don't sound concerned. Hale looked through a reinforced viewport toward a cluster of maintenance drones repairing damaged ships. Every world we save people from is a victory. We still lost the colony. We can rebuild a colony. His expression hardened. We can't rebuild 10 million civilians. The conversation ended there. The reality was simple. Humanity lacked the resources to match the Dominion ship for ship. The only advantage available was flexibility. So Hale used it relentlessly. Mining outposts became missile factories overnight. Cargo vessels transformed into drone carriers. Civilian communication networks doubled as intelligence systems. Every defeat generated a new solution. Every setback taught a lesson. The Dominion viewed warfare as a science. Humans treated it like improvisation. Weeks later, that difference produced another surprise. The Keeler Station had been under Dominion occupation for nearly 80 years. Its native population had long accepted their fate. Until humans arrived. Coalition raiding groups struck the station's defenses while local resistance cells sabotaged power grids from within. The attack lasted less than 4 hours. When it ended, Dominion forces surrendered. The event itself was not extraordinary. The consequences were. Across occupied space, news spread rapidly. The Keeler people had fought beside humans. And won. On Keeler Station's Central Plaza, Hale met resistance leader Varek for the first time. The alien's silver eyes studied him carefully. You know, Varek said, when we first heard about humans, we thought you were insane. Hale smiled. That's not entirely inaccurate. No species fights the way you do. Neither do empires. Varek glanced towards celebrating civilians. For generations, we believed resistance was hopeless. And now? The alien watched children pulling down a Dominion banner. Now I'm wondering how many others are thinking the same thing. The answer arrived sooner than expected. Within a month, unrest erupted in several occupied sectors. Nothing large enough to threaten the Dominion. Not yet. But enough to create concern. Back aboard the Eternal Ascendancy, concern had evolved into frustration. Zaldar stared at a growing list of disturbances. One rebellion. Then another. Then another. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Humanity was spreading something far more dangerous than weapons. Confidence. An advisor approached cautiously. Majesty, there may be value in opening negotiations. The chamber became very quiet. Zaldar turned slowly. Negotiations? Limited concessions could isolate humanity politically. The Emperor's gaze hardened. I do not bargain with species that should already be conquered. The advisor immediately stepped back. The discussion was over. Hours later, the Emperor stood alone before a viewport stretching across the length of his flagship. Stars drifted beyond the glass. For centuries, every challenge had eventually broken. Humanity had not. The thought irritated him more than he cared to admit. A notification appeared. Fresh casualty projections. Increasing resistance. Escalating costs. Longer timelines. The campaign was drifting away from expectations. Finally, Zaldar made a decision. A decision no emperor had made in hundreds of years. He activated a fleet-wide transmission. Every senior commander appeared on the display. I will assume direct command of Operation Final Eclipse. Shock spread across countless faces. The Emperor continued. This war has lasted long enough. The transmission ended. Across Dominion territory, the announcement sparked celebration. Citizens believed victory was now inevitable. Surely no species could withstand the personal attention of the ruler who had expanded the greatest empire in galactic history. When the news reached Admiral Hale, his officers gathered around the briefing table. One looked genuinely worried. The Emperor himself is entering the theater. Hale read the report twice before chuckling softly. The room stared at him. You find this funny? Someone asked. A little. Why? Hale set the tablet down. Because rulers only leave their palaces when they stop trusting other people to finish the job. Understanding spread around the room. For the first time since the war began, the Emperor was no longer acting like a conqueror. He was acting like a man trying to solve a problem. And that meant humanity had already changed the game. Beyond the station walls, warning beacons flashed across the tactical map. New Dominion fleets were entering the region. Far more than before. At their center traveled the most powerful warship ever constructed. The Emperor was coming. And his destination was clear. Sol. The darkest hour of Sol. The arrival of Emperor Zaldar changed the war immediately. For months, Dominion fleets had advanced with overwhelming strength. Now they moved with precision. Supply lines were protected. Human ambushes were anticipated. Escape routes vanished before coalition forces could exploit them. System after system fell. The industrial world of Carina Prime was lost after a brutal 8-day siege. 2 major shipyards were destroyed above Vega. A fuel depot near Sirius erupted in a chain reaction visible across half the system. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was losing faster than it could adapt. Inside Coalition Command on Mars, the atmosphere had grown noticeably heavier. Every briefing carried fresh bad news. Every casualty report felt larger than the last. Admiral Marcus Hale stood before a strategic display showing shrinking territory. No one spoke. There was little left to say. A young officer finally broke the silence. We've evacuated another 4 million civilians from the outer colonies. Hale nodded. Good. Sir, that's all we've done lately. Evacuate. Withdraw. Relocate. The room stiffened. The officer immediately regretted speaking. Hale surprised everyone. You're right. Several heads turned. The admiral folded his hands behind his back. Right now, survival is the mission. Nobody argued. Because everyone knew he was telling the truth. Meanwhile, hundreds of light years away, Dominion broadcasts celebrated victory after victory. On occupied worlds, giant screens displayed images of advancing fleets. Commentators predicted humanity's collapse within months. The Emperor appeared regularly in those broadcasts. Calm. Confident. Unstoppable. Yet privately, Zaldar remained dissatisfied. Inside the command chamber of the Eternal Ascendancy, he reviewed battle records from recent engagements. Something bothered him. Human formations behaved differently from every species he had conquered. Even while retreating, they learned. Each encounter forced adjustments. Each defeat seemed to produce new methods. Most enemies became predictable under pressure. Humans became inventive. A commander entered the chamber. Majesty, coalition forces have abandoned another defensive line. Zaldar studied the report. They're yielding territory too easily. Perhaps they're preparing for a final stand. The Emperor considered the possibility. If so, it was exactly what he wanted. One decisive engagement. One crushing victory. Then the war would finally end. Back in human space, reality looked far less certain. Refugee transports crowded orbital stations. Hospitals overflowed. Manufacturing centers operated around the clock. Yet despite exhaustion, nobody discussed surrender. That puzzled many Dominion analysts. One captured transmission eventually reached the Emperor's desk. It featured an interview with a civilian evacuation coordinator. The interviewer asked a simple question. Do you believe humanity can win? The woman laughed. No. The interviewer blinked. Then why keep fighting? Her answer lingered in Zaldar's thoughts long afterward. Because losing doesn't mean quitting. The Emperor replayed the clip twice. He still didn't understand. Several days later, an intelligence breakthrough reached Admiral Hale. The discovery came from dozens of battles analyzed together. A pattern emerged. Dominion fleets relied heavily on centralized coordination. Orders flowed downward from command vessels. Subordinate officers rarely acted independently. The system was efficient. Until communication failed. Hale stared at the data for nearly an hour. Then he summoned senior staff. By the time everyone arrived, a new tactical plan covered the main display. Operation Iron Horizon. One officer examined it carefully. "You want to let them reach Sol?" "Not let them," Hale replied. "Encourage them." Shock spread around the room. Another commander pointed toward Earth displayed at the center of the map. "That's a dangerous gamble." "I know. If we're wrong, then there won't be a second attempt." Silence followed. The plan was simple in concept and terrifying in execution. Draw the Dominion's massive armada into the solar system. Disrupt command networks. Force isolated units to operate without direction. Turn their greatest strength into a weakness. It was the best chance humanity had. Perhaps the only one. Preparation began immediately. Every available vessel received orders. Retired warships returned to service. Freighters were modified for support roles. Defense platforms were assembled around key approach vectors. Messages spread across Allied territories. And the responses came. The Keeler arrived first. Then other liberated worlds. Small fleets. Large fleets. Civilian volunteers. Former subjects of the Dominion. Not enough to guarantee victory. Enough to matter. As the final defensive line formed around Sol, thousands of ships gathered beneath Earth's blue glow. The sight was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Many crews knew they might never leave. On the eve of battle, Hale addressed the coalition. His image appeared on screens throughout the fleet. The room around him was quiet. His voice carried no dramatic flair. Just honesty. Tomorrow won't be easy. Thousands listened. Some of us won't see another sunrise. No one needed reminding. But every person on Earth is sleeping tonight because you're here. The transmission room remained silent. Hale looked directly into the camera. They came expecting obedience. They found resistance. Tomorrow, they learn the difference. Across the fleet, crews returned to their stations. Weapons were armed. Engines powered up. Final messages were sent home. Hours later, long-range sensors detected the first arrivals. Then another wave. Then another. The largest invasion force in galactic history emerged at the edge of the solar system. Countless Dominion warships filled the darkness. At their center traveled the Eternal Ascendancy. Emperor Zaldar had reached humanity's doorstep. In command centers across Sol, warning alarms began to sound. The final battle was about to begin. The Battle of Sol began with enough firepower to shatter worlds. Dominion warships surged forward in disciplined formations, their weapons illuminating the darkness between planets. Thousands of energy lances crossed the void. Defensive platforms exploded. Human cruisers vanished in flashes of white light. For the first hour, the invasion proceeded exactly as Emperor Zaldar expected. Coalition forces gave ground. Outer defensive lines collapsed. Several commanders aboard the Eternal Ascendancy began discussing projected victory timelines. Then Operation Iron Horizon activated. Across the solar system, hidden transmission arrays emerged from asteroids, moons, and abandoned stations. A powerful wave of electronic interference erupted. Dominion communication channels flickered. Command signals slowed. Targeting data became unreliable. Fleet formations lost synchronization. At first, the disruption seemed minor. Then the confusion spread. One battle group received outdated orders. Another moved toward incorrect coordinates. Several formations began obstructing one another. Inside the Imperial flagship, alarm notifications multiplied across command screens. "What is happening?" Zalthar demanded. An officer struggled to answer. "Our communication relays are being overwhelmed. Restore them." "We're trying." Trying wasn't enough. Human ships immediately exploited the opening. Small squadrons struck isolated targets and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. Independent captains adjusted tactics without waiting for approval. Groups separated, regrouped, and attacked from unexpected directions. The battle stopped resembling a coordinated invasion. It became thousands of smaller engagements. And humanity excelled in chaos. Near Jupiter, a Dominion assault fleet found itself surrounded by vessels it had previously driven back. Near Mars, coalition bombers destroyed a command carrier responsible for coordinating an entire sector. Across the system, momentum began shifting. For the first time since entering Sol, the Dominion advance stalled. Zalthar watched the reports arrive. Then he noticed something unusual. Human commanders kept adapting. Every time a plan failed, they created another. Every destroyed ship seemed to inspire greater determination among those remaining. The pattern repeated everywhere. The Emperor had conquered species stronger than humans. Species smarter than humans. Species possessing superior technology. None had behaved like this. A communication officer suddenly approached. "Majesty, Admiral Hale is requesting direct contact." The chamber fell silent. Zalthar considered the request. Then nodded. The screen activated. Marcus Hale appeared. His uniform showed signs of exhaustion. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. Yet his expression remained steady. For several seconds, neither leader spoke. Finally, the Emperor broke the silence. "You've lost worlds. Fleets. Millions of lives." Hale nodded. "Yes. Why continue?" The Admiral leaned back slightly. "Because the alternative is extinction." Zalthar studied him carefully. "Every species says that." "No," Hale replied. "Most species say that until things become difficult." The answer irritated him. Yet it also felt honest. The Emperor glanced toward tactical displays showing burning wreckage scattered across Sol. "You cannot defeat my empire." A faint smile touched Hale's face. "We don't have to." The statement lingered. For the first time, Zalthar understood the true nature of the conflict. Humanity had never expected total victory. Their objective was survival. As long as humans existed, the war remained unfinished. As long as the war continued, the Dominion would keep paying for every kilometer it gained. The realization arrived with uncomfortable clarity. Conquest required an endpoint. Humanity offered none. The connection ended. Neither leader had threatened the other. Neither had negotiated. Yet something fundamental had changed. Hours later, new reports arrived. Dominion supply lines beyond Sol were under attack. Several occupied sectors were openly rebelling. Former subject species were seizing the opportunity created by the war. The cost of continuing the campaign was growing by the minute. Inside the command chamber, senior officers waited nervously. No one wanted to say what everyone was thinking. Eventually, Zalthar spoke. "Provide casualty projections for another year of conflict." The numbers appeared. The room became very quiet. The estimates were catastrophic. Not because the Dominion would lose immediately. Because victory itself might become meaningless. The Emperor stared at the data. For over 4,000 years, he had ruled through certainty. Now certainty was gone. He rose from his command throne. "Open a fleet-wide channel." Officers exchanged stunned glances. The transmission activated across thousands of ships. Every captain. Every soldier. Every occupied world. The Emperor appeared on countless screens. His voice remained calm. "We measured strength through territory, fleets, and weapons. Silence spread throughout the galaxy. We believed superiority guaranteed obedience. He paused. We were wrong. Shock rippled across the command deck. Zaldar continued. Humanity has demonstrated a truth we failed to understand. Images from the war appeared behind him. Burning colonies. Defiant defenders. Liberated worlds. Coalition fleets still fighting. A species that refuses surrender cannot be conquered. For the first time in 10,000 years, a Dominion Emperor issued an order no one imagined possible. All military forces are to withdraw from human space immediately. The chamber froze. Then came the final command. Retreat. Across Sol, Dominion formations began turning away. One by one. Then by the thousands. Admiral Hale watched from the command center overlooking Earth. No cheers erupted. Most people were too exhausted. A young officer stared at the retreating armada. Did we win? Hale looked toward the distant stars where the invasion fleet was disappearing. After a long moment, he answered. No. The officer frowned. Hale's eyes remained fixed on the departing enemy. We survived. And in the end, that had been enough to make the greatest empire in the galaxy walk away.